So, Man to Man podcast, Dennis, Mike. We're here in the basement again, recording. So,
Man cave.
the man cave. Yep. We're about 2 months, we're about seven weeks away from our next basic, which is in Danbury, Wisconsin, Wild at Heart Basic. So you've been to or led or helped lead probably about a dozen of these basics so far, over the last year, basically that you've been doing this. So give me just a quick rundown of what it is. So if somebody's watching and they're like, "Hey, you guys keep bringing up this basic. What is it? What am I doing? Why would I go to this?"
It's a life-changing event that will have men reclaim their masculine heart.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. I mean, to be realistic, that's what it is. Obviously, it's led by John Eldridge and his team, through video. The Wild Art team, the process of how they do it is just amazing. So any guy that, like I say, it doesn't matter where you're at in life, young, old, married, unmarried, it just doesn't matter. Every single time there is transformation that happens in the heart of every man that I can ever remember. I don't think there hasn't been one in any of the events that I've done or helped to where someone said, that was a waste of my time. Right. I don't think I've ever heard that. I know I haven't never heard that. And so what I mean by life-changing is you literally become a man that's grounded in the belief of what God can do in a man's life, by bringing up things that have been holding you back that you didn't even realize you had, to adding things that you need to for the rest of your life. So it isn't like leaving you in this pit of despair, but it actually, you walk out of it with a plan and a purpose to take what you've learned and walk out as a new guy. So, I mean, I could sit here and talk for 20 minutes about it, that, but that's kind of the basics of it. So
cool. So it's 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's really actually 72 hours, I want to say, almost exact, but it's 4 days, Thursday night, Friday all day, Saturday all day, Sunday morning. Bunch of guys, could be 5 people, it could be 50 people, who knows, how many people show up to these things. But anyways, you're out in the woods, you're kind of processing through all of these things, so it's a lot of alone time mixed with a lot of time where you get other guys around you to kind of build some bonds with that.
Yeah, and the big thing is you disconnect. Right. That to me is the biggest thing. You put your phones away and you don't look at phones or emails or internet, and as well as I do, because you've led multiple of these too now. I mean, just a day away from that is life-changing.
Mm-hmm. So for sure. So it's basically taking the same content that the Wild at Heart team teaches when people fly out to Colorado and go to their boot camps. It's putting it in video form, and it's bringing it into your world and allowing you to do it without having to fly out to Colorado and do their boot camp, which they only do once a year. So it's really hard to get into and do. Which by
the way, whenever they have signups for it, it's over 2,000 men sign up for that every year, and they got to pick 600 of them, right? 600,
it's 400 of them.
Yeah. It just goes to show you that we can do it in Minnesota.
Right.
It's just not live.
So website, mantoman.org. There's an events tab. Signups are open now. We have 2 different price points. More of a bunkhouse style sleeping, and then the lodge style sleeping, which is smaller rooms. So guys have choices. They can do it. Sign up. It's at the end of August, 24th through the 27th. Yeah. It's available now for people to go sign up. So I'm excited about it. It's just one of those things that every time we do it, it speaks to, you come away with it we've been to a lot of them.
I don't think we've been to 12, but we've been there.
I feel like you've got to at least hit 12.
I think I'm more like 8.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a lot, but
we've done 3.
We've done 3, right? And so I know I participated in 4, at least 4. So 8 or 9, yeah. Well, I mean, not counting the Becoming a King.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
but yeah, we've done a few, and that's what's so great. Me and you look at each other every time, and though we're hosting them and leading them, we're still getting rocked.
Very little leading going on. Hosting is definitely the word. Yeah. It's definitely the Wild at Heart team that leads it. Yeah. We just kind of host it, and the great thing is we come away with it with all of this change in our own hearts, and just with this ability to look at things and go, holy crap, I never saw my life that way, or I never thought of things this way, and conversations that we have with guys, stuff is constantly coming up where I'm like, yep, that was in session 4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the great thing about it, and this is what, I mean, I don't, we could talk about this all day, we can, but I think that the thing about it is, John and his team always talk about that this isn't a shtick, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
And that's why I think you can go back 3, 4, 5 times and you're still going to be learning things. Because why? Because it's not a weekend event that you learn everything and you get a package full of all your end results and all your answers, and now you're good for the rest of your life. No, and I think he's designed it that way purposely for other men that get changed by it to host these events. He wants these things done all over the world.
And they are. There's one, I think there's one this weekend in like Glasgow. Yeah. I mean, they're all over the place. I know there was one, I think, last weekend in New Zealand.
Yeah, there's 2 in Ireland I found the other day.
It's pretty cool to watch this. And it, it goes along with what we're talking about. We've been talking about last week, we started a conversation about fatherhood, part 2 this week. And one of the things that I think in my life, and so this is a personal journey that I've been on for the last couple of years here with you. And, and one of the things is you start to realize, you start to examine the things that affected your life that from your childhood. And again, it's not like lay down on a couch, tell me about your mom, right? Like that's not what this is. But there are things that happen in the basic retreat. We talk a lot about retweet. Totally lost my tongue somewhere in there. Retreat.
Retweet.
Yeah. It was, they talk about father wounds and things like that. And as a dad, you can't help but think, the content is talking about your wounds that you've suffered as a father. But as a dad, you can't help but think about the wounds that your kids have suffered because of you.
Right.
Like it's almost immediately I go there every single time. And that's where this, where this question that I asked you to talk about today came from, really, is me going, holy crap, what wounds do my kids have from me, right? I mean, I was a Christian when my kids were born. I just didn't act like it all the time. I just didn't, frankly. I mean, there were a lot of areas in life where I didn't. And, we talked a little bit about in another podcast, which we were talking about earlier, right? The difference between Jesus as Savior and Jesus as Lord. Being saved and being a disciple. Like those 2 things really are what we're talking about here. And yeah, I was saved, but I know that I wasn't being discipled. Right. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have people that I was mentoring, right? That's what we're doing here is we're trying to expand that reach and mentor people. And that's where it was pretty obvious if you look at the way I raised my kids. So now I have a 14 and a 17-year-old, right? So I have kids who are beyond that stage of me being able to teach them on a daily basis directly, right? Like sit down, right? Proverbs 22:6, start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it, right? We started them a little bit in the way that they should go, my wife and I, but we missed huge. I missed huge opportunities to teach them in the ways that they should go, and so now they're 14 and 17. Right. So the question is, what can I do now? Because as guys that are in my position who are past this point of having young kids, we can't go back. Right. I can't go back and start them off in the way that they should go because they've already been started in the way that they're started.
Right.
Exactly. So what do I do now? How do I, with a young adult and a teenager, how do I continue to, or try to direct their path at this point when they have started to develop their own worldviews and viewpoints on things?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it, Danny, is the reality of you and I being a parent and a father. We all mess up, and God's grace is sufficient for that. I mean, the fact of where you say, Jesus was my Savior and my Lord, I had the same thing. There's just some things in my life when it came to my parenting my kids that I wasn't taking lordship, right, or following His lead. I was doing it on my own and thinking that I had the answers, and so the great thing and the sucky thing about it is, when your kids do get 13, 14, 15 years old, you see the things that you contributed that were good.
Right.
And you see the things that you contributed that were like, oh my gosh, that was so me and crappy. And how I can't believe my son said that. Wait a minute. I can believe he did that because I remember doing that as a parent. And so I believe no matter what, we all as parents and we all as dads have done that in some way, shape, or form. But the big difference I believe right now is if you're in that spot, or if there's a dad in that spot of where, okay, the younger years are over and I can see some of the things my kids are believing and doing now, and it's not what I want them to be doing. I think the reality is remembering that, that those first year 1 to 7 years old is such an informative year that good and bad, they're going to learn everything from you as a parent. I don't care if they're in daycare all day. I don't care that you're the contributing factor to that child as a parent. And so it's more teaching mode, when they're younger, right? And then when they get old enough and they get their own voice, and they don't necessarily want to be taught, right, by us. I think it's more now seeing the things that we've done well, but also seeing things that we haven't done well, and now being an example to them more than it is teaching them. What do I mean by being an example? Change it.
Right.
Change your heart, so your behavior towards that child will change, so they see it now. Right. At the same time, don't go and feel all guilty for the mistakes we made. You know what I mean? I mean,
good at that.
Well, it's easy to,
right?
And the thing that I think we have to balance is, of course, we made mistakes, and of course, that we sold things we probably didn't want to seal or sew into them. But at the same time, when they're 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they're going to start making their own decisions. Yeah. Right?
For sure.
Whether they're good or bad, they're going to take their own decisions. And sometimes they make a bad decision despite how good we raised them as a parent. Sometimes they make a good decision despite how we raised them as a parent. But there does come a point in time in our child's life where they're going to make their own decisions despite necessarily what I taught them.
Right.
And so that's where I don't think God, or it doesn't say through Scripture when God's talking about Himself as a father, does He say that He wants us to feel guilty for the things that we've done wrong? It's not saying that. But now, at the same time, I know for my own life, when my kids got to be teenagers and I began to see the fruit of my direction,
right,
I asked for forgiveness.
Sure.
I went to them and said, you know what? I apologize because I was very critical, was one area in my life that we've probably heard on this podcast before. I was very critical to you for many years. Could you forgive me for that?
Right.
That's all I can do.
Right.
Right. And so now what? Now I got to lead a life that's less critical, so they see that there's change in the life.
Because the forgiveness, right? Asking forgiveness. I mean, that's step one. And I've done that. Gosh, like you said. I mean, constantly, right? Constantly with my kids. I'm like, hey, you're right. I did say that. And I need you to forgive me for that because that was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's actually not hard. I shouldn't say it's not hard to do that. It's hard because they always look at you like, yeah, okay, right.
And why do they look at you like that?
Show me.
Exactly.
Is what they're looking for, right?
Like, I've heard this before.
Yep, exactly. It's not even I've heard it before, but more so, like, why would you do something and then apologize for it, and then make me think that you're not, like, I'm not supposed to do that? You did it.
Right.
Now, just because you apologize for it doesn't mean you didn't.
Right. Exactly.
Right. As a teenager, they've got this mentality of, but you already did it.
Right.
Like cat's out of the bag kind of thing. Right.
right.
And so really it's I mean, with my kids, frankly, what I am trying to model is, yeah, I did that. I'm going to ask your forgiveness, and now you hold me accountable for not doing that again.
Which is
because he's 17 and 14, they can do that. Yeah. They can look at you and be like, "Oh, are we going to do that again?" You're like, "Well, no, definitely not." Yeah. And you can participate with you, and they can participate with you. And again, not to say, "Hey, I do this all the time and I do this really well," but it's something.
Yeah. And
it helps them to see the reality of adulthood, of being, which is you might screw up, and it doesn't make you a screw up. It means you did screw up.
Right. And the biggest thing to me with parenting and being a father, and I wish I would have did this every time too, or remember this every time, is that people, not just your children, people are not going to remember the mistake. They won't remember the mistake if they see the change.
Sure.
Right? If they see the change, that's what they're going to remember. You keep repeating the same mistake over and over again, and they're going to see the mistake. But you change, they'll see the change over the mistake. Mm-hmm. And that's what teenagers are looking for. Teenagers are looking for someone that's going to do life with them, not tell them how to do life. That's where they're at. And that's the change that's got to be done. So if I'm going to say something, I got to be more than a Pharisee and just tell them this is what I want you to do, but then lead with a different, that's why Jesus says in Scripture, he says, do what they say, but don't do what they do. Mm-hmm. Right? Because what they were saying was a lot of truth to it, but their actions weren't it at all.
It didn't line up.
Right. And teenagers can read that. I was a youth pastor for 14 years. I mean, teenagers can pick out so many things from adults, man. Some of my adult leaders, they weren't adult leaders anymore just because the teenagers are like, I'm not sure about that guy, because they're very insightful. They can see, they can feel. But the difference is now than the 7-year-old is now they're vocal about it.
Right.
Now they're gonna tell you straight to your face. Mm-hmm.
They challenge you on it.
Oh yeah,
straight up. Yeah.
Like a 2-year-old reaches for a stove, challenge you whether he's gonna touch it or not. They do that at 13, 14, 15, 16. Now they're gonna start challenging on it. They want to see a result.
Right.
They don't want to see a parent lying to them, just saying it over and over. I'm sorry, I did it again. I'm sorry, I did it again. And I think, and once again, my kids were my plumb line a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I, just like you told your kids, hey, hold me accountable. I told mine. Jackie was a plumb line to me for many years about how much time I spent with her. Right. Because I gave my life to ministry in so many ways. And then that one time, I don't know if I ever told the story, but that one time, this is what I caused her to be my plumb line. This one time she, Dad, can I talk to you? I'm like, honey, I just got home from work. Well, it's kind of important. Can I talk to you? I'm like, can we talk tomorrow? And she looked at me, she goes, Dad, every single Wednesday night on youth night, I see you sitting across the table from teenagers talking to them for 45 minutes to an hour. Now I'm asking you for some time and you don't have time for me?
Right.
Oh, talk about a kick in the mouth. Mm-hmm. So I told her, I said, when I'm not spending the time that I need with you, I said, I want you to hold me accountable.
Right.
And so she would walk up to me and say, Dad, you're not spending time with me. But she'd walk up to me and say, so how you been the last couple of weeks, Dad?
Right.
That was my cue. That was the plumb line of her going, we haven't had date night or those kind of things, or we haven't spent time together,
Right.
So, and I think teenagers love that. In other words, I think they want to be put in that position as a parent, right? Mm-hmm. Because, oh my gosh, you want me to help you?
Right.
So
yeah, come alongside and let's walk this thing together. I mean, it's admitting that you're not perfect.
Right.
One, right? It's admitting that they have value. Hey, you can help me with this.
Right.
And they do, frankly. I mean, it's not like this is groundbreaking stuff here. I mean, These are your kids. They have value. They can provide value to their own lives and direction to their own lives when they get to be this age. Now, I think that they have much less figured out than they think that they do.
Well, and that's what's so interesting. I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you think about the first 1 through 7, years of age, it's clinically proven that when kids cry, when they're young and they cry or they scream or they yell, we think it's something we need to discipline out of them. But what they're doing is they're actually trying to communicate something that they feel they don't have the words to communicate. So that's how they communicate. That's how they burst out and scream. Well, it's not because they're disobedient kids or they're trying to communicate a feeling that they have no words to put with it. Right. That's a 15-year-old.
Exactly. Yeah.
Same thing, that they're sensing something's not right. Now they're communicating, but they have no clue exactly how to communicate it. So they're just going to go off with what comes to their head first.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, you suck because you did. Okay, what's going on?
You hate me.
Yes.
And you're like, what? Oh, we were just hugging. What are you talking about? Right? Oh my gosh.
Right. So they're trying to communicate what's going on in them without the ability or the learned behavior to communicate it.
Right.
And so when we see them communicate something different or difficult, we right away correct them.
Yeah. Right.
And then we wonder why they don't talk to us.
Yeah.
Versus
all right, I don't feel hate for you, but what am I what
caused you
gives you that thought, right? Like what is happening between the two of us? And what I find so much that happens with my sons are, you get I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, so how did we get here then, right? Like, walk me through the steps to get from where we were to now. Because if you don't know, I don't know, and then neither one of us knows. And so how did we get here, right? And if you can get them to engage, which sometimes you can't, sometimes you can, then you can sort of walk through and go, okay, I see how you came to that conclusion. I don't hate you, and I just want you to know that, I'm going to try to do some things different. And you go back to that, right? I apologize that you felt that way. Now, help me to do different things along that path so that we don't get to here.
And that's the other thing I didn't do well. I mean, I could give you 2,000 different things I didn't do well, but but the fact of when they say you hate me, and then we're like, well, okay, why do you think that way? I don't know. I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. Then we push them to talk.
Right.
Well, they're already upset and they're already angry at something. So the worst time to have a conversation is when they're there.
For sure.
But what do? We want to fix it. So we push them. Well, come on, let's talk about it. Well, then we end up getting in an argument.
Or here's my favorite one that I do, right? I'll go, I don't hate you. Look I just bought you this and I did that and I did like
proof,
like listing off a bunch of things that you just did is good. And they're going to go, oh yeah, you're right.
You're right, Dad.
Well, I didn't think about that.
You bought me a bite.
I'm going to continue to play the PlayStation that you bought me, that you just proved to me that you love me because of it. Right. I mean, that just doesn't
work.
But at the same time, it's the first thing that comes to mind, though. You're like, what are you talking about?
Because you want to show
We're sitting here eating dinner in the house that I pay for at the table, eating the food. Like, you're telling me I don't care for you.
Right.
Or I never get you anything. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Because that's not what they're thinking. It's not what they're trying to convey to you.
Right.
They're trying to convey something else, like you said, that they don't know how to express.
Right.
And so picking through that, I saw this that happens, and I didn't ask my son if I could tell a story, so I'm not going to tell you which one it was. But, we were outside at the beach the other day with him and some of his friends. And, some of his friends are like, and they're like, we don't want to really be outside in the sun and playing. Like, they're too cool to play anymore and do that stuff. Until they started playing. They had a friggin' blast.
Right.
I mean, they were like little kids again. They were having so much fun. And it was almost like you had to drag them out of the lake, to be like, all right, hey, it's time to get going. Like, we've been here all day. We've kind of got to get going, kind of thing all over again. Like, again, they take on this persona of one thing.
Yeah.
And then you realize later that, man, they're just trying to find a way to express how they feel. It's not really what they're trying to say.
Right.
And so, there's a part of them that feels that way, but there's a big part of them that still is in there.
Right. And at the same time, we don't want to go too far one way of it's all about letting them express how they feel and trying to, because that's actually where parenting is going. There's no discipline anymore. The children are dictating the parents and telling them what they think is right and wrong, and the parents are agreeing with it. The children are running the house, which are a lot of our TV shows today anyways, that project that. So, I mean, we're not saying there isn't discipline. I mean, there's, the Bible says, you correct them, you discipline them, and you discipline out of, the one thing that I learned when it comes to discipline, whether it's a teenager or a kid, is the reality of the only time you're supposed to ever discipline is direct disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, you don't discipline a kid for throwing a rock and accidentally breaking your window. You don't discipline them for that.
Right.
That was a mistake. But a direct disobedience, like when your child is 15 and says, F you, I'm out of here. Okay, I'm going to go do drugs.
Right.
Direct disobedience, right? Which is key. So once again, we're not trying to say here it's all about discovering the heart of your child and letting them express all their feelings and all the other kind of stuff. There is moments like for instance, there's one example was with my one daughter. She had a problem, and whatever the case may be, in the first 20 minutes of the conversation, I didn't say anything, and she just crying and explaining to me all these things, and I had 12 opportunities to say something and I didn't, which is good. So finally, after about 25 minutes, she finally got to the root of what was causing her pain, right? Most of the time, I can't say I did that every time to my kids.
Right.
I want to interject. I want to get in there. I want to correct them. I want to whatever. But there's so many layers like you say, when they get to that age, there's so many layers that you got to let them break through before they're going to actually expose their heart.
Right.
And when they do expose their heart, they're usually ready for you to say something or ready for you to direct, whether it's towards us or not. But it's just being patient enough, especially as dads, to let them get through all the garbage first, right?
Right.
And then there's maybe a disciplinary action that needs to take place, because the Bible is, if I can read 5 different scriptures that talk about how God disciplines those He loves, and the rod of correction. Which I'm telling you, if you're a parent out there and you got kids under 7 and you're still spanking them, for whether you believe it or not, it's in the Bible. Dude, you got to get one of the rods made and hang it up on your wall, because the rod of correction is like 3 feet long. It's an inch thick. It's a piece of wood that's 3 feet long, an inch thick, and it's about 6 to 8 inches wide, and it's got holes drilled in it. That's what they spank their kids with. You put that on the wall and say, "This is what I'm going to discipline you with when you direct disobedience." These probably kids would grow up pretty.
I wouldn't have to spank them,
but
hopefully.
But you know what I mean.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there's a moments where you need to discover their hearts. You need to discover where they're at, especially in teenage years. Because they want to know that you're with them in life, not about directing their life. And yeah, some of those things are going to be directed towards us and how we didn't do well.
Right.
I mean, that's just the truth.
And I think the thing to keep in mind too with teenagers specifically is that they're seeing everything, and they're taking in a lot of that. They're taking in a lot of that feedback, even when you don't think that they are, right? And so one of the things that I think I'm trying to continue to work to be better on, because I want to say like, hey, I'm doing this, and I am every great once in a while, is doing things not for the direct interaction with them, or not for something positive immediately, but so writing my kid's notes, right? Like I'll write out a note for my sons, and and give it, and leave it for them to take with them when they're going to work, or or whatever, or just texting them a quick message like, hey, I saw that you picked up your laundry and had it all in the laundry room this morning. Yeah. That's great. It's showing initiative, and and I appreciate that. And by the way, I'll make sure that and then I'll go and do that laundry for them again, not to coddle them or whatever, but to show them, hey, I appreciate. Now, I don't always do it.
You're seeing something more than just a negative.
Yeah, I don't always do it, but again, and again, taking those, and I want to do more of that. I want to do more of that where I'm doing those things, even though they may not, because they're boys, so they're just like, yeah, I don't care, Dad. Hey, thanks for the note, but I got other things to do, right? But those things are important, and they do appreciate them, and I think that long term, that's the kind of stuff that makes a difference, right? Because if they can look back and go, man, you know what, my dad did care, and he showed it in ways that at the time maybe I didn't think was cool, right? But he did appreciate that. So
you're planting seeds, and I mean, one of the great things about Proverbs, if you want to know how to be a dad, read Proverbs. Literally, that's what I like about Sean's class, because it's a father speaking to his son.
Right.
And I'm not going to read the whole proverb, but if you just read, if those that are listening just read the whole Proverb 4, just read the whole chapter, Proverbs 4, but read it in the manner of how a child is directed by the things that a father says.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, what we contribute with our words and our actions toward our kid is forming those kids. Mm-hmm. And I want you to read that in a way of like how your child, especially, your sons or whatever, but your child's direction is going to be 100% altered by the way that you raise them, by the things that you speak into their lives. And so for my kids, there's just so many things. I mean, I told you the story about driving down the road and I had to hit the brakes, and Constance didn't have her seatbelt on, and she flew up and she hit the back seat. And my daughter Jackie's like, see, that's what you get for not wearing a seatbelt. And I turned around, I'm like, Jackie, that was mean. She goes, well, that's what you told me the other day. Right. So like you say, what you are contributing is going to show an effect in their lives. And some's good, some's bad. We're not perfect. But I think that's the other great thing about teenage years is you begin to see both.
Right.
And there's been multiple times where I've seen the attitude, especially, my son Tyler, I've seen his attitude and I'm like, oh boy, that was me.
Right.
And then that's a teaching moment where, hey, I can see that this is what I contributed to your life, but you're going to have to. The one thing I told all my kids was, me and Carrie are going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that we ask is to not hold them against us, but change them in your own life.
Right.
Because those were areas we couldn't change or we didn't change well. And so don't hold a grudge against us or walk in unforgiveness. Know that we had a difficult time doing it, but you could probably change it, And hopefully they heeded to that. I think they have some paper.
So I think the important thing here is it's never too late.
No.
You got to start sometime, and so now is the time you have, right? I mean, if you didn't do it before, then now is the time to start.
Yeah. And I mean, really quick before that, of course the enemy's going to come and say you failed as a father.
For sure.
Of course he's going to do that.
For sure.
Of course he's going to say that it's too late now.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, and like John and Morgan and all those guys say, don't tap out.
Right.
Don't tap out changing yourself. Hopefully one day they see the change in you and it'll cause change in them. So.
Right. All right. Good.
All right, bro.
All right.